I think I was in a place where I really needed to process some of those feelings. And I was just like, why do I feel so, I don't know, like I've got to achieve and I've got to be this type of person. And if I'm not this type of person, people are going to think less of me. And like I was trying to figure out all of those lies really and why I was believing them. And I don't know, I just had a moment of, why don't I write a book about it?
This is the future.
Hello and welcome to the Alternate Futures podcast, where we chat with indie sci-fi creators about their work, the world, and anything in between, or beyond. Today I have something a little different for you, as this is recorded from a live interview I did for Books and Beverages UK at the Harrogate Library in North Yorkshire. As such, I apologize in advance for any sound issues and for the slightly shorter length than usual. There is an interesting audience discussion at the end of the interview, but I didn't feel the sound quality was good enough for the podcast. However, if you'd like to check that out, you can find it on booksandbeverages.uk or on their YouTube channel. Search for the handle Books and Beverages UK. Now on with the show. Today, I'm here with LG Jenkins. So Lydia is an author, a book lover, coffee drinker, editor, and I've learned also a book marketing consultant. So when she isn't immersed in writing dystopian worlds, you'll either find her reading at a coffee shop, playing netball, or spending time with friends in sunny England, which it has been sometimes.
It has been, that's true at the moment, so that's nice.
Exactly. So the Son of Endless Days was her debut novel, and it's the first novel in her Merit Hunter series, which is a dystopian listed as young adult fiction, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And what she hopes to do is encourage others in their purpose, worth, and faith through writing. And we'll get into some of the sort of where that fits in with your dystopian writing. So Lydia, it's great to have you here today.
And thank you for having me. It's really nice to be here.
So one of the things that jumps out from your bio is we have a line. It's quite embarrassing how you schedule your mornings around your coffee. So it sounds like you really like your coffee.
I wouldn't say I'm a coffee expert. Like, don't come to me to say what's your favorite bean or anything like that. I only have one coffee a day. I have one caffeinated drink a day because otherwise I get the shakes. But I really enjoy the taste of coffee, and often my morning, my motivation is driven by when I get my cup of coffee. So I don't often have it first thing. I'll do some work or some writing first. So I reward myself with coffee. So I see my morning quite structured around that one lovely cup of coffee.
Excellent.
Yeah.
My wife's Italian, so coffee is a part of our family, although I
Yeah.
don't drink it, so much to her chagrin.
Oh, that's great. If someone gives you a coffee, she gets it all right. My husband doesn't like chocolate, so whenever we get chocolate, I'm like,
Excellent. So you also studied literature at university. You study literature, you read audiobooks when you're cleaning, or you listen to audiobooks when you're cleaning. You're never without some kind of book. You're an editor, and so you're kind of immersed in the whole book world. Does that become overwhelming at some points?
It's really interesting. So just to give you a bit of context to my career, I did literature at University of York. And I remember very vividly being in the library in my third year. I was finishing my dissertation and I said to a friend, I'm done with books. I have had enough of books. I've had enough of academia. I can't do it anymore. If I read another book, I think I'll die. I was so like, I'm done. So then I went into a marketing career. I was 6 years in marketing doing, well, there's a bit of a context within that 6 years, but we'll come on to that because it was the reason I wrote the books in the first place. But working for Your Move and Reed's Raid's estate agent in their marketing department. That was my first job out of university. Then I moved on to another job, which I quickly got made redundant from. But then I worked for 3.5 years for a company in Harrogate, actually. They were based on Hornbeam Park originally. They're now in Leeds, but they called the Alternative Board, and they help business owners build their businesses and lead better lives, basically. And I was digital marketing exec there. And so that was the context of my career. Throughout that, I started to read books again. I did start to like books again, but more for pleasure. And then the job in between that I got made redundant from was basically a startup. I was 23 at the time, and I was very much like, this is going to be a really glamorous job. It's going to be international travel. I'm going to climb that career ladder. I'm going to be really successful. And they made me redundant after 6 weeks. It was like, if that's not happening, I just pulled the short straw. The main office was based in Hong Kong, and they basically realized, we can't afford to operate in the UK market. And they allowed them to hire me a whole thing. But that was a moment where I realized I had quite an unhealthy relationship with work and its connection to my self-worth. I was very much placing all of my value of who I was on what I did, and all of that stuff in terms of the glamour, the good job, all of that. It was all about how other people saw me. And that was like a moment where I was like, that's probably not that healthy. That led me to read the books. But then through that, my books are hybrid published. I now work for that publisher as a marketing manager 2 days a week, and then do freelance editing and proofreading for authors, but also doing marketing services for authors. So it might be helping you optimize your Amazon listings with what we call metadata and keywords so that they rank higher on search, or Facebook advertising, or social media management. So helping you build an Instagram account or a TikTok account, because BookTok's a massive space to operate in. So yeah, that journey is just like, basically from that moment of saying I never want to read another book, I've ended up reading books full time again.
So by the way, authors in the audience, a good plug there for your book marketing.
Yes. Yeah,
So what was it? Well, first of all, I mean, you're quite young to have made that realization. So that's pretty amazing. But it also has informed your writing, and we will get to that in a little bit. So what was it like to return to reading for joy? Because I mean, I'm kind of in that state right now. I'm trying to keep up with all the reading, and it becomes it's work, right? So what was it like to return to read for joy? And then did that sort of keep you inspired as you went back into publishing and author?
Yeah, I mean, it was just enjoyable. I remember the book that did it for me was Wuthering Heights. I read widely, I read all sorts of things, but I did that book at A-level, and I don't know when it was, I was like, I'm just going to read it again. And I saw it in a whole new light. I read it, and when I finished it, I was just like, it's an incredible book. Right? It's incredible. And I was so excited. And I was like, what? You spent a year studying this. Why have you only just realized how incredible it was? And I think that was the moment where I just got to read it for pleasure. I didn't have to analyze why the author used that color or why the author did that and what it meant for foreshadowing and like all of that sort of prescriptive stuff that you have to do when you study literature. It was just nice to be able to do that. And then, yeah, it just rolled from there, and I started reading for pleasure again. And I still manage to do it now, but I would say what I tend to do is I read stuff that is very different to what I might be doing for my work. The publishing house I work for is a Christian publishing house, so it's a lot of non-fiction stuff and some fiction, but you won't get like a sort of a easy read romance comedy. Like, so I'll read a bit of rom-com for pleasure, so it's a bit removed, I guess.
Do you intentionally read separate from your genre so that you don't, because some authors don't want to accidentally take in works they've seen in other books, for example?
I don't know if I intentionally do that. I read a lot in my genre as well, because I think that's important from a business marketing perspective to think, well, what are the sort of books that are currently coming out and what are the things that audiences are reacting to? So I think that's still important to do. I just think I read widely is my answer. I just think I enjoy a lot of different types of books. So I don't intentionally do it. I just go on recommendations and yeah, that sort of thing.
Do you have, put you on the spot, do you have a favorite book that's just come out that's making its way around?
My goodness.
You don't have to answer. I'm just curious.
No, I have a favorite book that I could talk about, but it's not just come out. That's Small Great Thing by Jodi Picoult, which is, I don't know if anybody's read that, but it's quite an amazing book. It's essentially about a Black midwife in America who is accused of causing the death of a baby who is the baby of a white supremacist. And you basically get both perspectives and the lawyer's perspective for the case and everything. And it's a remarkable book. I definitely recommend that. So yeah, that's very different just to Dystopia.
Right. Well, maybe yes, maybe not.
Yeah.
So when did you decide to take on your own writing then? I mean, you obviously had this hate-love relationship with.
Yeah. So it was at that moment when I got made redundant from that job. And I think I was in a place where I really needed to process some of those feelings. And I was just like, why do I feel so, I don't know, like I've got to achieve and I've got to be this type of person that And if I'm not this type of person, people are going to think less of me. And like, I was trying to figure out all of those lies really and why I was believing them. And I don't know, I just had a moment of, why don't I write a book about it? And I went to the pub with my husband and I was like, I think I'm going to write a book. Like, I never thought about writing. I've done a lot of writing because of writing essays and that sort of thing. But in terms of writing an actual novel, I hadn't ever thought about doing that. And so we went to the pub and we had a conversation and I was like, what if I created, because I always enjoyed like the Hunger Games as a teenager and that sort of thing. And the thing with dystopian fiction is, obviously with the likes of George Orwell and the novel We and all of that, is it's saying, and it's a narrative, it's a message to society, a warning of saying, if we carry on this way, it's not going to be good. So I think dystopian lended itself very well because I felt like I had something to say and something to process and something to figure out. So yeah, I guess I decided to process a lot of that struggle that you go through, which we can talk a bit more about as someone in your 20s in a social media world. I processed that through putting it down into a dystopian world.
Right.
It was quite a long-winded way of doing it. Like,
yeah, more than just a blog post. Like, so when you decided to take on the novel idea, I mean, presumably, like many authors, you have that excitement. I'm going to do this, but was there also some fear or some like, I don't know what I'm doing? I mean, you did literature in university, but I don't know how much writing that involves in terms of creative writing.
It's really interesting because that was, how old am I now? That was 5 or 6 years ago. And I don't really remember. I definitely had a sense of, yeah, it's all a little bit of a blur. I definitely had a sense of, let's just give this a go. There was a definite excitement of, let's see what happens. And I never really intended it to become anything more than it was. I never intended it to become like, I'd end up in a book publishing career. I never even thought about that. I just wrote it.
So the eternal question that I think all authors, probably our panel, get asked is, are you a pantser or a plotter?
Oh, I'm a pantser, but I'm trying to be a plotter.
Especially when you're building an entire world with multiple. You told me you finished the 4th book.
Yes, literally this week. I sent it to the editor this week.
So that should involve quite a bit of plotting through your world, especially at this stage.
Yeah. I mean, I found the last book much easier to plan because it all happens on one day, the last book. So in terms of where all the different characters are, and I didn't have to think much about timelines other than continuity with the other books. So that was slightly easier to actually be a planner in that instance. But generally, I just write as I feel.
Okay. I'm curious though, with the editing and the book marketing, etc. Because I mean, obviously, imposter syndrome is something that authors face a lot.
Yeah.
Do you ever get that when you, like, let's say you've read a really good book that you're editing, and do you ever think, what am I doing? Like, or is it just push that to the side and say, oh, no, my stuff's good?
Absolutely. I don't think, I always get imposter syndrome. It always happens in terms of those thoughts of, well, I haven't sold many of my books, and if I'd done it this way, it would have gone better, or if only I'd been smart enough not to start with a series and done that other book idea. Like that always happens. But actually what I've realized is that a lot about life is almost failing forwards. Like, you have to do it. You have to make a decision and you have to stick to this decision and be like, no, this is the way I've done it. And I've learned so much through it. And actually, often that imposter syndrome, it's just low self-esteem at the end of the day. It's just you saying to yourself, oh, I'm not good enough. When actually, is there any evidence for that? Most of the time, no. And actually, it's getting over that and being like, no, let's just go for it. And yeah, it's easier said than done. Some days it's really hard.
So are you just a positive person, or do you have like a mantra you go through to live this?
I'm generally a very positive person. I mean, I have a faith as well, so that helps me a lot as well. Very supportive friends and family, my support network, and that connection and valuing the relationships of the people around me very much helps for that attitude, I think. I'm not a positive person every day.
At least
I just put that out there. Yeah. You will see me on days where I'm very negative, but And then I go to bed and it's all right the next day.
I wanted to plug your publisher, or give you a chance to plug your publisher. You're published by Grace and Down Publishing.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because some of the subject material your books deal with, I think, is it Grace? It's a qualified psychotherapist.
Yes, Sarah Grace. Yeah.
So that's kind of an interesting link with your materials.
Yeah.
Come up at all? Do you guys discuss this subject?
Not very often, actually. No. So she's an amazing woman. Actually, she's a dyslexic, and so just to put context of the publishing company, there's 3 different imprints. There's Malcolm Down Publishing, there's Sarah Grace Publishing, and there's Grace and Down Publishing. Grace and Down is very much the general market, so less Christian content and like church-based content, like my books. And then Sarah Grace Publishing is a dyslexic-friendly publisher. So Sarah Grace has worked with Cambridge University and typographers to create a new dyslexic-friendly font. So that imprint is very much pioneering accessible reading, and which is incredible. And then Malcolm Down is more Christian living stuff. And so that's the publishing imprints, if you like.
How have you found I always have to ask this, the marketing phase? You are a marketing consultant now. So have you found that that's made things easier?
Yes and no, in the sense that because I have marketing experience, I sometimes feel like I know how things should be done. But actually, for certain types of books, you have to have very different marketing strategy. So it's learning, okay, you can't do everything. So what is the strategy that's going to be most effective for this book in its genre, in its market? Because, I don't have time to do all of the marketing for my books. So, I think it's about prioritizing the thing that's going to be most effective.
If you had one message to give to authors with, let's say an author comes to you with, like, 1 or 2 novels, and they're looking for advice on how to approach marketing, what would be the one most important piece of advice that you think you'd give them?
Make sure your book's the best it can be. Have they got reviews that say this is really enjoyable read, the plot and the pacing and all of that was like that, it's solid, the manuscript is solid.
Right.
Because the worst thing that can happen really is that you've got an incredible book cover, you spend money on marketing, and the marketing's effective, but then the actual product isn't any good, because that actually, think about if you wanted to write more and more books, what does that do for your reputation if those books, it's got really low reviews? So I'd say make sure the book's the best it can be.
So hire an editor, especially.
Yeah, and a proofreader
as well.
2 proofreaders. Those typos always seem to slip through. How does that happen? You have like a team of 5 people look at it, and it's like, right, we still got mesmerized instead of memorized.
Yeah, I've heard some interesting stories on that regard as well.
Yeah.
So moving on to your books and your series then. So you have written a young adult dystopian, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
The Son of Endless Days is the first book. It's right there. This is the Eric Hunter series. So I guess we'll get you to read some in a moment. What I wanted to bring up, there is a Canadian, American, British author who likes to say that science fiction isn't trying to predict the future, but it's shining a light on the present. In some ways, your story seems to indicate as well.
Yeah.
But I wanted the audience to keep this in mind as we move into yours. But we did want to say yours is young adult, but it does seem like, what age did you envision your characters?
Yeah, so really, it's actually, the genre is probably new adult. That's a sort of an emerging genre now, but not a lot of people know what that is. So that's sort of the age of probably like 16 to 30s, maybe more 18 to 30s, when teenagers go through that transition of becoming adults, basically. I wrote it for people in their 20s. The reason I did that, and I'm very passionate about that age group, is because I'm 30 this year. Apparently life starts at 30. Apparently it's all uphill from here. I'm looking for encouragement. So and reflecting on the 20s, and actually in this sort of social media digital world, a lot of people in their 20s feel very lost, because you have several things that happen. You have this thing where your friends are no longer at the same stage that you are, but you can see everything that they're doing online. So all of their lives look so much better than you.
It's all actually curated as well, right?
Yeah, it's all a highlight reel. And then you basically think, oh, right, I better use my 20s to travel. Oh, but I can't not build a career. Oh, and I've also got to save for a house. And I've also got to be healthy. And that's all coming through social media because people are doing these things. And you start to feel quite lost. And then also you're paralyzed by the amount of choice that you've got, because you can see all this choice online, like how many job opportunities you can see online, and then you don't do anything. So it's like, wow. And then you just sort of feeling like, well, if I've got to do all of this stuff and I don't do all of this stuff, I'm not going to have achieved anything. And then I'm not going to be as good to society. I won't look as good. And it becomes this whole spiral. And you just have then really low self-esteem, really low self-worth. When the reality is that each of us is so special and individual that none of our paths or timelines look the same, and they don't have to. And that's okay. And so the premise of the dystopian world is that it's a world where only the productive are rewarded. So everybody has a merit score. Everyone has a watch that tracks their points. It's very similar to the social credit system in China. Depending on how you spend your time, whether you're eating healthily, if you have a chocolate bar, you're going to lose some points for that. And whether you're working, whether the networks that you have, that you're educating each other, that it's always about progress and you've always got to be doing something, you've always got to achieve. And it's basically following a young couple, AJ and Jenny, who are both trying to make it into the glorified quarters, which is the highest faction in the society. If you make it there, you've made it. And they're both working really hard, but they each have secrets that threaten that end goal. Jenny's on the edge of burnout. Burnout is seen as a very weak thing to happen. And AJ, I won't tell you his secrets because that's a massive spoiler. Both of what they're trying to hide in this effort to get to the top will threaten their relationship and their status in society. So yeah, it's sort of following them as people in their 20s battling with all of this stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And I would just wanted to point out that there are multiple kinds of dystopians. I usually read cyberpunk, so that's more of a dark, gritty one. You have the Hunger Games kind of, and you've picked your dystopia, which is kind of the corporate dystopia in a way, as you described, which is sort of clean on the outside and rotten on the inside.
A bit of a false utopia.
Yeah. So with that, maybe now that we've set the setting, as it were, you could give us a short reading.
Sure, yeah. So I've picked one that is actually set in a library because I thought that would be quite appropriate, seeing as we're in a library. Okay. Jenny felt worse in the morning. A few hours after her shopping date with AJ, she sat on a bench outside the library, turning her wrist back and forth to admire her new watch strap. Get back inside. She knew she needed to. Though the outside air was hot and clammy, it was just fresh enough to ease the headache. She hoped AJ wasn't thinking about her. In between their joking and pleasantries, he'd spent the entire time in watch by command asking if she was okay. He knew something was up, but she couldn't let on. She could handle it. Heading towards the door, she held her head in her hands to at least try to lessen the pounding. The library was always rammed on a Saturday, even when the sun was setting. She hated the place for everything but the immediate merit. Exhaling deeply, she looked up and noticed a woman from across the square. She was beautiful. Jenny couldn't make out all her features as different people wandered across the line between them, but she noticed the way her long brown hair flowed gorgeously down her back. She wasn't doing anything special, just standing in the sun looking at her screen in a loose red dress that was drifting in the slight breeze. Jenny closed her eyes and placed the girl next to a waterfall. The brightness of her dress contrasted with the greens and blues of nature. She considered going home to paint or beginning a sketch in her notebook. Yet when she opened her eyes again, her model was gone, disbanded into the life of the city, yet back inside. Jenny rose from the bench, her mind still partially fixated on the girl and the ideas she could inspire, when she felt the deep soak of sweat on her back. Feeling around her, she realized she had dredged her blouse, before grabbing her head as the ache began to stab itself deep over her cheeks and her jaw. Making it to the library bathroom, she stared into the mirror. A red circle appeared, accompanied by the voice of technology. Your skin is presenting only a 30% moisture. Jenny slammed her hand at the mirror's controls to silence it. She tried to conceal the redness around her eyes, noting that her skin was almost as bright as the girl's dress. If you're just tired, stressed, what was happening to her? I was M500 by the time I was your age. Her father's words were back. She threw off her blouse and put it in her bag. After adjusting her bra straps beneath her vest, she breathed deeply and staggered back, out into the library, breathing through the pain in her head. She walked back through the building, but all she could detect was blurred figures and strange shapes as her vision began to suffer. Jenny wandered past many desk screens and distracted eyes, all learning more contributive skills. As she struggled to walk in a straight line, drones dodged her as they served people with requested files, drinks, food, or anything else they fancied. She spent too much of her life in this place, he decided, as a dull ache crept into her chest. It was depressing how many nights she'd worked through on skip sleep, either here at home or at the office. Sometimes in her slippers, just so she was comfortable in some way because there was no other way she could be. Jenny's vision was suffering more, and as she arrived back at her desk, she willed herself to shake off the distortion, turning a page on the screen and downloading information about the Clean and Chulo initiative for some awareness merit. Reading but not absorbing, her eyes went from sentence to paragraph as the dull ache in her chest began to sting. Her legs and arms were shaking, her vest was absorbing her sweat, her face got hot, and she suddenly yelped as her left foot began to spasm. She scrambled back to the bathroom, whacked open the cubicle door, braced herself against it, and realised she couldn't properly breathe.
Thanks, that was great.
Okay. I haven't read that for a while. I was like, oh.
So your dystopian paints, your dystopian world paints a picture that is probably very recognizable to a lot of people, especially as you go through the story.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said before, a very clean corporate dystopian world that I'm sure a lot of 20-somethings and older people as well can recognize. Thinking of the quote I gave earlier, I was just wondering regarding future and present, do you think we're heading towards a dystopia, or do you think we're already in one?
In terms of what's in my books, I think we're already there. Someone gave a review once and they said a very accurate metaphor for today's societies. And I think that sums it up because a lot of the things that we experience now are very dystopian in terms of the way that people are segregated, the way that people are put into certain groups and certain boxes. And a lot of that, there's a lot of work to try and undo some of that. I mean, COVID was a massive example, wasn't it? I mean, that was a dystopian novel. No.
Inspired many dystopian novels.
Exactly. But I think in terms of the dystopian message that I'm trying to get across to younger people in this is that we are living in a place that determines your value based on what you've done, based on what you've achieved. And actually your value isn't determined by that. You're still worthy. I think we're very much there in terms of a society which wrongly or like intentionally or not, does paint that picture for us.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure it is encouraged by various powers that guide us.
Yeah.
If you had a message then to, let's say, young people who felt trapped in this as you did at one point, well, you weren't necessarily trapped, you were actually eager at one point, and then realized. So what would be the message? You mentioned sort of the goal that you had with writing this, but let's say they were feeling trapped and were looking at how they can get through this. What would be your suggestion or your message?
I think it's just that there's no right decision. Go with your gut in terms of what job you want to do at that time, what you want to pursue at that time. Don't compare yourself to other people, as hard as that is. Actually celebrate other people. And when you make decisions, realize that life is about failing. Life is about learning and exploring. It's not about getting it right. I think that's one of the things that, especially people in their 20s now, they think if I make this decision, it's got to absolutely be right because this is the rest of my life. And most of the time it's not.
Yeah.
Their actual dream job and dream career, you might start that when you're in your 40s. And it's actually just enjoy the present and make a decision and go for it.
I'll make my 17-year-old daughter watch this because she's right at that stage where she's deciding.
Yeah.
And she's already decided. So we'll see. We'll see how it pans. Or maybe not. We'll see. She needs to be more flexible, right?
Really interesting, the decision thing, because often you find if you're stuck in anxiety, it's often because you haven't made a decision about something. You're going back and forth. You're sort of like, oh, maybe I'll do that because of this, but then what if this, but if you make a decision and you're like, no, I'm going to focus on this decision, even if it all goes terribly wrong, at least I've made a decision.
Yeah.
There.
So the merit system in your books, now you obviously started this several years ago. Not that there wasn't already a social credit system in China at that point. Did you base it on that with a sort of hybridization, or did you just sort of come up with it clean?
So I was inspired by a few episodes of Black Mirror on Netflix. They're sort of individual episodes, dystopian concepts, basically taking technology to its extreme and how humanity interacts with it. And there's an episode of Black Mirror which is very much people like vote on each other on their phones. So if I thought, Edwin, that you were rude to me, I could demote you, and then that would make your score go down, and that would determine what sort of... Yeah, sounds all right, doesn't it?
No, do it.
That might mean that if your score is so low that you can't buy a house in a certain neighborhood and that sort of thing. So I was inspired by those sorts of ideas. And then when I came up with what my world might look like, I was doing some research and I discovered the social credit system in China. And I was like, it exists. It exists. We're living in a dystopia. So yeah, it was a kind of amalgamation of being inspired by certain things that I'd read and watched.
It sounds actually like that voting system you described from Black Mirror is a nicer version of cancel culture in a way. It's like cancel culture, you just get cut off and taken down.
It's a fantastic episode. I think it's called Hated by the Nation of Black Mirror, about cancel culture. And me describing it, you're going to think this show sounds ridiculous, but there's basically these wasps that are they're like little machine wasps. And they had been programmed that if people use a trending hashtag, which is cancelling an individual, these wasps would all go and kill that individual. It's quite dark. It can be quite dark. But yeah, that's commenting on cancelled culture, that actually these people who get cancelled are still people. Like, it's quite we could go into a whole can of worms. Yeah, it's that dystopian message behind it, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you have to make decisions when you're doing your world building. And so something that's struck me very early on in the book was obviously the vegetarianism or veganism, or however extreme it was in the book. A lot of people eating a lot of kale and carrots.
Yeah, that green juice.
Yeah, exactly. How deeply did you go into the things like the food and the world building?
I mean, it's mainly set in a desert and stuff. A lot of the world building within the first book was very much setting the scene in terms of the merit system and how it works in terms of sport, in terms of food and that sort of thing. And as the journey goes on, you find out a bit more about where food is produced and all of those sorts of things.
So when did you start the first book?
It was actually originally published under a different name. So I started it in 2019, originally published it in 2021, and then republished it last year with a new cover and everything. And that goes to the thing about failing, is that the covers weren't right, the titles weren't right. We just didn't get it right. We needed to redo it. And that's okay, but I wouldn't have been able to do that without having that foundation of what I did before. I didn't get it right first time. And I still probably haven't got it all the way right.
So what was the first title then?
It was called Crowned Worthy.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah. Not as catchy.
Not as catchy, right.
Yeah. And also 2019 might explain, I didn't notice, and maybe I didn't read enough of it, but artificial intelligence, presumably, had you started writing this in 2023, for example, that would have featured much more heavily.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with the world, it is so run by technology that AI would just kind of be a given. So it's there.
So you assume it's in the background.
It's just there. It's happening all the time. My husband works in AI, so it's kind of, we have a lot of conversations about it. But it would very much just be the way that things are, But it's not meant. I don't even think they would call it artificial intelligence, because it would just be technology. It wouldn't be anything
running in the background.
Yeah.
At this point, the conversation was open to the audience, where we had a lively discussion, which you can find on the Books and Beverages UK website and YouTube channel.
Well, I think perhaps on that note, maybe you can just tell us where you can find you online.
Yeah, I mean, I'm active on Instagram and TikTok, but my website is probably the best place, which is lgjenkins.com.
Great. So LG Jenkins, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for listening. Information and links related to this and all episodes are available at alternatefutures.co.uk. I'm also over at Substack under Alternate Futures, where I post articles on science fiction, socio-technological issues, and futurism. You can subscribe for free or sign up for a paid account if you'd like to support the podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, why not share it with friends, writers, and other sci-fi fans you know? And if there are any indie sci-fi creators you'd like to see featured, send me a message at podcast@alternatefutures.co.uk. Once again, I'd like to thank you for listening, and I hope you'll join me on the next episode.
This is the future. Human error. Evolution. This is the future.